happening. So today we're going to talk about this guy right here. This guy and the Caribbean dengue outbreaks. A lot of things going on in the region. Mosquitoes everywhere apparently, and people are just getting sick too. We have a lot of respiratory viruses going around as well. But there's a lot of things happening underneath the surface that we need to talk about. All of that on the screen we're going to talk about today, but not in the way that you think, because we're going to focus on this guy right here. This is the focus of our attention today. And then I don't know how many of you remember this story about this factory that's breeding 30 million mosquitoes per week in Colombia. And the mosquitoes are being released. They do not terrorize the local population, they're saying. Far from it, they're actually helping to save and improve millions of lives. That's what they were saying down there. Because they were sending out these genetically modified mosquitoes to kill the real mosquitoes. But since then, what we have is an uptick in Latin America and the Caribbean with dengue outbreaks and people getting sick from the virus. So we want to take a look at this guy. I'm going to give you some information right now about what has been happening behind the scenes, right? Because at first glance, this all seems like some bizarre, almost absurd concept that Bill Gates, Microsoft mogul, philanthropist involved with mosquitoes. It's crazy, right? He's known for computers. But like all good things that are happening, if you look further beneath the surface, you don't like what you see. The official story of mosquitoes and malaria. Now, on the surface, the connection between Gates and the mosquitoes is quite straightforward. And there's this foundation that they have, and they have long been involved in efforts to combat diseases transmitted by mosquitoes, most notably malaria. Well, we all know malaria is a deadly thing and affects millions of people in tropical places, especially. And the foundation has poured millions and millions of dollars into these controlled programs, including the genetically modified ones designed to reduce what they say is the transmission. And there's this high profile project involved in releasing genetically altered male mosquitoes that were intended to mate with females, leading to the offspring that could not survive, basically. Effectively, they were saying that would reduce the mosquito population over time. So it sounded pretty good to everybody. But as always, there's a darker theory because there's a gene editing side of it. But as you might imagine, when someone as influential as Gates becomes involved with something as potent as genetic modification of mosquitoes, the conspiracy, the theories, they start to swirl. So you have to look for the real thing. And one of the most disturbing things that I found is that Gates and his foundation have underestimated the potential consequences of the genetic experiments. The goal is noble, wipe out malaria, yeah, we understand that. But if it altered the mosquitoes rather than being the solution, it now becomes a weapon. That is what is happening. And so it starts carrying new diseases, inadvertently making the mosquitoes even more resistant to conventional control methods. If you look at what's happening in the Caribbean Islands, they're saying that these usual treatment, the fogging and stuff that they do, they're not working anymore. And there's a reason why they're not working anymore, because they're genetically modified mix up with the real mosquitoes now. And if you're making 30 million per week, what do you think is going to happen to mosquitoes from nature? Now, the modified mosquitoes, genetically modified ones, they're not just targeting the malaria. They're actually being engineered for something dark, and of course we know that by now, because they've been designed to carry and spread other deliberately or unintended consequences of genetic tinkering. And what we found is that these experiments are creating what they call super mosquitoes, capable of carrying more deadly diseases and spreading them faster than nature even intended. All of that is, of course, part of population control hypothesis. And then there's the more famous or nefarious angle. Isn't just fighting the mosquitoes, they're doing, but using them as part of the larger population control strategy. And if you look at the approach to global health, sometimes point out that his efforts, Gates I'm talking about, seem to have a dual purpose. One of them, people say, is to improve a valid goal in health. And then there's two, to reduce population growth in certain regions. And they're targeting and altering mosquito populations, especially in Africa and South American regions and the Caribbean. The foundation is sequentially pursuing a population reduction agenda under the guise of benevolence. And I think we all know this by now. But using mosquitoes is a hell of a thing. The idea goes, like by controlling the spread of the mosquito-borne diseases, they could actually thin out certain populations without the need for overtly violence or any invasive methods. I mean, they tried it with the pandemic, but of course, this hinges on the idea of the genetic engineering. So it's being leveraged in ways beyond what we're being told. So it's not just about eradicating the malaria, but about engineered mosquitoes spreading other stuff that control population in more invisible and insidious manners. Of course, there's the global health monopoly, which is the idea that these projects create a dependence on big pharma by promoting genetic modification of mosquitoes and other technologies. This foundation could be helping to reinforce global pharmaceutical monopolies. After all, they make billions and billions of dollars. And if the solution to the problems are these altered mosquitoes, of course, they're going to be now needing a new truck up your arm, new substances, new treatments, and new healthcare systems. Who stands to profit from that? So the global focus on these diseases like malaria and others, well, plague poor countries and regions for centuries, it is a distraction from others and for the old issues that are at hand right now, because massive investments in these research alongside his direct involvement in controlling mosquito populations could ultimately create the perpetual cycle of health dependency, where the pharmaceutical companies continue to profit off the outbreaks, creating an upending market for more arm juice and other treatments. So you see what's going on here, right? Yeah, I think you see it now, because we can't speak to certain things, but I can tell you what is really happening here. So then is the darker and then the more paranoid side of this whole thing, where his role as a technological messiah is actually using health initiatives to cover a more sinister agenda, because the genetically modified mosquitoes, not about the malaria, but about something more sinister. It's a bioweapon test. It's a step in a larger biotechnological revolution. And after all, I mean, he has long been involved with advanced technologies. So there is a claim that these mosquitoes might not just be targeting that one disease, but they're actually engineered to carry genetic markers that allow governments, corporations, other organizations to track and control populations. Remember, they're genetically modified. You can put anything into them via their genetic signatures. And they are unleashing them in large numbers to be used as genetic surveillance. So the bites have been used as markers for identifying people's DNA and manipulating the genetic traits in unforeseen ways. So the mosquito bite isn't just about spreading anything what people call disease, it's about tracking actually with these ones that they're creating. And then after that, you're thickening everything more because there's a connection to the arm juice. After all, he has been a vocal advocate for the global arm juice programs and pushing billions in efforts to get the arm juice up to people. But with the rise of the mRNA technology and the genetic modifications, the real aim of these mosquito projects is about controlling, about experimenting with the genetic engineering of humans. And you are to know that because the mosquitoes are just a larger front for the bioengineering project. Kind of test run, you would say, for manipulation, where humans are slowly adapted or even modified through both the mosquito-borne and the direct genetic interventions. There's a lot of nasty things going on. So it's far more complicated with these mosquitoes they're building in labs and far more darker than what we're being told. It's about fighting one thing, but it's not. It's a very much larger and secretive agenda, which involves population control, their bioweapons, and genetic manipulation, and what you call finally a creation of a global health system designed to maximize profits and control. These people are not as goody to show as you think they are. Just wanted to keep you in the know because there are plenty things happening that you need to think about. So when you're seeing all these outbreaks in the region where they are specifying Africa, South America, and the Caribbean, where they're still letting go all these genetically modified stuff, it's so only one purpose and one purpose only. Get to know what's happening out there, because what you don't know might end up killing you. Thanks for listening, guys.